We all know that feeling of being completely, utterly dead tired. But have you ever wondered what would happen if you just stopped sleeping? For good? For decades, scientists knew it was fatal, but they had no idea why. It's been one of biology's great mysteries. So today we're going to put on our detective hats and dive into this incredible story to uncover the real killer. And just to show you how high the stakes are, get this. Way back in the 1890s, researchers discovered something absolutely shocking. For puppies, going without sleep was actually more deadly than going without food. I mean, wow. That single fact kicked off a century-long hunt to figure out what sleep is actually doing that makes it so critical for survival. So, for more than 100 years, this case was wide open. Scientists knew that sleeplessness was a killer, but they couldn't find the murder weapon or even figure out where the crime was taking place. The investigation started, well, in the most obvious place you can imagine.
Of course, everyone pointed their finger at the brain. I mean, it makes sense, right? Sleep is all about the brain. It had to be the prime suspect. And at first, early experiments seemed to back this up, but as you're about to see, the evidence was pretty flawed.
The first clues came from a series of pretty grim experiments. Back in 1894, some Russian scientists kept puppies in constant motion until they died, which only took about 5 days. When they looked at their brains, they found hemorrhages. A few years after that, other studies on dogs pointed to similar brain damage. The case against the brain was definitely starting to look solid.
But here's the thing. There was a huge hole in all this early evidence. Were the animals dying because they weren't sleeping? Or were they dying from the unbelievable stress of being constantly prodded, walked, or trapped in these awful contraptions? There was no way to tell. The alibi was shaky because the main suspect, the brain, was never really properly isolated from its accomplice, stress.
Okay, so fast forward to the 1980s. A researcher at the University of Chicago named Alan Rechtschaffen comes up with this brilliant experiment to finally, once and for all, separate sleeplessness from stress. His method was so simple, so elegant, and it completely changed the game.
So here's the setup, and it's absolutely ingenious. You have 2 rats on a single turntable, right over some water. Now, whenever the sleep-deprived rat starts to doze off, the platform spins, nudging them both awake. This means both rats get the exact same amount of movement and disruption. The key difference? The control rat could still catch some Z's whenever the other one was awake and active. The result was crystal clear. Only the truly sleep-deprived rat died.
So this was huge. It was official proof. Sleep loss itself is lethal. But it also made the mystery even weirder. The rats got really sick. Their fur turned yellow, they got these weird skin lesions, and they lost a ton of weight, even though they were eating more. And yet, when the scientists performed autopsies, they found nothing. No obvious cause of death, no smoking gun.
This was the official, baffling conclusion. Imagine that. You have a body, you know who the killer is, sleeplessness, but you have no idea how it did the deed. The trail went cold, and it stayed cold for decades until a brand new investigator decided to look at the case from a totally different angle.
Decades later, a Harvard neuroscientist named Dragana Rogolya decided to reopen the case. She had a hunch that maybe everyone had been looking in the wrong place this whole time. What if, she thought, the real crime scene wasn't the brain at all? See, her gut feeling was that since lack of sleep messes with your metabolism, your circulation, your digestion, maybe the cause of death wasn't starting in the nervous system. She put it perfectly when she said, "It seems like it can't be all about the brain."
Her team turned to a new high-tech tool, genetically engineered fruit flies. These flies had a special awake switch built right into their genes. All the researchers had to do was raise the temperature a little bit, and that switch would flip on, keeping the flies from ever sleeping. No stress, no spinning turntables, just pure sleeplessness. And wouldn't you know it, just like the rats, the sleepless flies died, living only half as long as they should have. So this super elegant experiment proved it all over again. Sleep loss kills. But it brought them right back to that same haunting question from the 80s. Why? If the problem wasn't a malfunction in the brain, where on earth was the damage actually happening?
This time, Rugolya's team started looking everywhere else. They examined the flies at every stage of sleep deprivation, and they finally found the smoking gun, in a place almost nobody had thought to look before: the gut.
And you can literally see the evidence right here. It's incredible. The flies' guts were glowing.
They were lit up with this massive toxic buildup of these damaging molecules. And look, as the days without sleep pile up, you see the exact same thing happening in the intestines of both flies and mice. This was it.
So what is this glowing stuff? They're called reactive oxygen species, or ROS for short. Now, these are just a normal byproduct of your body turning food into energy. But if they're not cleaned up, they become incredibly destructive. Think of them like tiny molecular thieves. They run around stealing electrons from anything they can find, like your DNA and proteins, causing cells to just fall apart. It turns out sleep is basically our body's cleanup crew for ROS.
Okay, so this was the biggest lead in a century. If a buildup of these nasty ROS molecules was the real killer, that led to a really fascinating and totally testable idea.
The question was so simple but so profound. What if you could just get rid of the ROS? Could you actually save the sleepless flies from dying? So the team decided to try it. They started feeding the sleep-deprived flies a diet packed with simple antioxidants, which are famous for neutralizing ROS.
And the result? It was absolutely mind-blowing. Case closed. The sleep-deprived flies that ate the antioxidants didn't die. They lived a completely normal lifespan even though they never, ever slept again. They were basically cured of death by sleeplessness.
And here it is, the final nail in the coffin that proves the gut was the crime scene all along. The cure only worked when the antioxidants were targeted to the gut. When they tried boosting antioxidants in the brain and nervous system, it did nothing. The lethal damage was coming from the gut, period.
So let's just recap this incredible scientific detective story. First, we learn that yes, sleep loss itself is fatal. It's not about the stress. Second, the killer isn't brain failure but a total breakdown in the gut. Third, this breakdown is caused by a massive buildup of these destructive molecules called ROS. And finally, and maybe most amazingly, at least in flies, you can stop this from happening with simple antioxidants.
I mean, this discovery just completely changes how we should think about sleep. It's not just some luxury for our brains. It's a fundamental, body-wide process of maintenance and survival. Which leaves us with one last, huge question to chew on. If sleep's #1 job is this deep, cellular house cleaning for the entire body, what other vital functions of sleep have we been completely overlooking this whole time?